Ladies and gentlemen, this is SO Chris 199 with a new story episode. And with this one, I'm asking the question, do you have what it takes to be a security lead? This is something I never expected to do. I never really wanted to be a lead. It was just like that one time I applied to be a police officer because one after the other, the sheriffs, regular PD, just different people that were coming in to make arrests, even parole officers. I got asked, me and my partner, multiple times saying you really should consider applying. And over time, there is now going to be a possibility that I'm going to become a detentions officer, and the chances are that they're actually going to be really good this time. But back then, when I tried to, I didn't end up getting the job. When I applied for PD for, I don't remember exactly what it was for as to what the reason was why I didn't get the job. But anyways, for today's story video, I ended up becoming a lead. So when I ended up leaving the state job, the state mental hospital, for the very first time, and I think this was actually the first time I ever went to an ER position. And for this position, my friend had called me, and I was actually talking to him about giving back the uniforms to the job, and actually ended up going to a year and a half later, the one that I actually just put in my 2 weeks now. So him and the guy who was a supervisor, who was also someone that I worked with the year prior, they were saying, we really need you to come here. We really want you to come here because we don't have someone who's exactly solid with the experience that you have, because we were the ones that worked with you and trained you, and you have experience with us, and just stuff like that. So what ended up happening is that I became the team lead for security, just due to you'd be surprised how far you can get in unarmed security when you just come into work on time. You just do what you're told. The minute the supervisor or the director or lead, whoever it is, just says, hey, get this done, and you just get it done within 5 or 10 minutes, it actually goes pretty far, because when you show respect, the respect is mutual. If you are professional, it actually gets noticed. So, because I had no intent of ever doing this, but this is what happened. So, about what's been 2.5 years into doing security, about that is when I became the lead. They said, we're going to give you Monday through Friday. You're going to get $2 more an hour. We're going to put a team under you, but they all exactly know what to do. They've been here, the other guys that I worked with. So my partner is someone I met when I worked at this job at the ER, and I had somewhat experience. So going back about maybe probably 8 or 9 months before that, there was this guy who was the previous supervisor at the ER location. And keep in mind, this was a family of hospitals. It was in the same, you could transfer to different areas if you wanted to. So he said that because of the level of codes that they had on Saturday, Friday, and Saturday nights, especially on Saturday nights, going from midnight all the way to 6 a.m., we were pretty much, whoever was working those graveyard shifts were pretty much getting called to something every 20 minutes in the ER. This is it was in the college area, but we were getting a whole bunch of different people for different reasons and whatnot. It was insane. So, and he said, if you come in, and I went with him one time, and I went with him twice actually before I even transferred to do the graveyard shift on Saturday. So I worked 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. on my regular Saturday shift. Then I tried to go to sleep on top of the security desk all the way until midnight, and it never worked. I could never fall asleep. But we got up, and they said, if you can come by 12:30, so 12:30 a.m. all the way to 6 a.m., and wait for your relief to come there, we are in such desperate need. We will give you $10 more an hour than what you're making. So me and one of the guys who trained me, we both made like $30 an hour, $29 an hour, like something like that, just to show up for this one shift. And just for this one shift, I thought I broke my hand during a code. I literally could not move my left hand for like a week afterwards when trying to hold this kid down who was like on fentanyl, or I don't know exactly what he was on, but even with giving him shots and whatnot, he was not calming down, and we had to put him in the straps like in the gurney and everything, and it was pretty crazy just with those 2 shifts. So I knew what to expect, but they said it wasn't normal for things to be that crazy like throughout the rest of the week. So anyways, I ended up working 80 hours a week. When I transferred, then put in my 2-week notice, and I left. So now I was permanently working as a shift lead for the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift. Worked there for 6 months. Had a couple of different partners, and something to keep in the back of your head if you're going to become excuse me, if you're going to become the shift lead, a couple things to keep in mind. If they ask you to do something like this, even though it's like for more money and it's a better schedule, you're basically the guy who needs to figure out what, like with things that are going on with the hospital for security, you're basically the supervisor. You're basically you're the proxy supervisor. Because how it worked at the hospital I worked at, my friend, the supervisor who was running the entire shift, was working 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. So then I would take over for him. And then at 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. there was another shift lead. So I was one of 2 shift leads. So, anyways. So you have to you're the one taking charge of the situations as to whatever's going on. Like one time, I guess I can give an example. One time, the state trooper came in, and his wife, she broke her arm or something like that. She was in Bay 6, and he came in and he told us, hey, I'm just letting you know, I'm not giving you my weapon. Like, without us even like talking or anything, I was just doing a patrol. And so my partner said, you're not allowed to do that. That's, I don't know if it's like a HIPAA violation, or I don't remember it was like the first time I'd ever been in the situation. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what the policy was. I probably should have sat there and actually read through the hospital's policies, which would have been, really helpful. But he said, and then the guy, he looked at us, and I remember he was like 6'2" or something like that. He was like this to me, but he said, I don't care what you tell me, I'm not giving you my gun. He said, I'm not going to get in a fight in here. And he was like, I know your guys' reputation. He said something like that. And so I looked at my partner, he looked at me, and then I kind of just had to make a snap decision. I said, because I didn't know what to do, I just said, give me like 10 minutes because I have to make a couple phone calls and look up some stuff, because I really don't even know what to tell you, because I told him something like that, give me about 10 minutes, I'll be right back. And then so I left. I mean, the guy, he showed us he had a badge number and everything. He was an official state trooper. So I went back, and then I just called my friend who was a supervisor, and I was asking my partner, like, have you ever run into this? And he said no, like something like that. And so found out that because he was technically law enforcement, and PD once a shift was bringing in people that the squad car or the SUV, the PD SUV, would be behind the ambulance. So, and every time they come in for Bay 1 or Bay 2, they'd be handcuffed to the gurney. Like basically just getting seen by one of the nurses or whatever, and then once they get by the EMTs come in, then once the nurse gives the okay to discharge, go right to prison, right to jail. So I ended up telling the guy, hey, you can go ahead and keep your firearm, because when it comes to this particular hospital, I don't know how it is with other hospitals, but with this one, any person who's in law enforcement, they're allowed to have their carry with them. So even in the state of Arizona, it's fine. I just, for some reason, it wasn't clicking in the moment. So anyways, and then I'll tell you another story. So I was on. This was probably one of the most insane shifts I've ever worked in security. Was St. Patrick's night, the St. Patrick's Day weekend. That Saturday night was. It was. Well, it wasn't a Saturday night. It was Friday night. It was 3 to 11. We were getting calls. Me and my partner. We seriously got calls like probably every like 30 minutes. It was for whatever reason to keep coming back into the ER, kick someone off property. People not leaving from, that was a big one, not leaving the ER, the lobby area. So that was, I remember that one being nuts. One of the things that happened was I was outside on the phone with my wife. I see a police officer come out of the main, basically the main ED doors. And so he starts running like in the opposite direction. He's like running to where, because there's like a line of cars, I can't see where he's running because I'm on the other side of the parking lot where my vehicle's at. He starts running, and so I was like, I'm gonna have to call you back, because I was like, okay, well, no one called me on the radio or anything, so put my phone down. My partner also sees him when he just happens to come out of the security office. He sees me. I point over there in the direction the officer's running, and right when we start power walking over to see what's going on, from what I was told, a guy had been dropped off. Thrown, but not dropped off. A car came, sped into the ER, the AMBO area. There was a guy in the passenger seat, and the person, whoever was driving, threw him out of the car. He was rolling on the ground, sped out of there. The guy was dying. He was ODing from fentanyl. Or I don't know if he was on PCP or whatever this guy was on, because this is the only time I've ever seen something like this, even working at the mental psychiatric hospitals. I seriously watched about 12, maybe 14 PD surround this guy, struggling to keep him on the gurney, because a nurse and a tech were running out of the ED doors with a gurney, like with the IV pole and everything, running out there into the parking lot. They somehow got this guy, and this guy was pretty short. He was like 5'5". They got him onto the gurney, and as they were trying to tie him in the leather restraints on there, I don't know if this guy had superhuman strength or something, because it's like, the thing like you see in movies and things like that, like, those like Marvel or whatever, like, TV shows. But I don't know what this guy was on exactly. They said it was fentanyl. I found that out later, but because I know that PCP supposedly that does that to you also. But I watched, they surrounded him. All these big guys were struggling to keep this guy on the gurney in the parking lot. He kept pushing himself up like it was like nothing. And I was like looking at this guy, and then he was looking at me, and he was crying, he was screaming, just help me. He's screaming, help me, I'm dying, but he kept trying to get off the gurney and like run off. And they were struggling. All these big guys struggling to keep this guy on the gurney. So finally, when they were, the police and the nurse were able, and the tech were able to get him down in the restraints, like I seriously thought he was just gonna like just rip him off, just pull him off like that, and it was just gonna, like, the leather straps were gonna rip. Surprisingly, they actually stayed on, and he wasn't able to do it. I don't know if he was like running out of steam or at that point, or I don't know, but rolled him in. And this is something that happened many times. They didn't have enough staff, so they asked me to be his one-to-one, even though I'm security. So I said okay, and I did it for an hour and a half. And this guy, he just kept rolling around the bed. Me and him were just talking, but I was trying to like keep it a low profile, wasn't talking too much. But he kept saying, I'm not going to do anything. Like, he was like, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. He kept saying that. I was like, okay, all right. Just kept staring at him, making sure he wasn't going to get up and try to attack someone or whatever. They let him out of the restraints. And yeah, he just kept crying. He kept saying, I'm never going to do, fentanyl again or whatever. But I was thinking to myself, like, I was like, you couldn't tell because I learned how to have a stone face while doing this kind of work, but I was like really nervous. This guy could have gotten up and just like, I would have, if me and him got in a fight and no one helped, like I would have run out of steam. So anyways, but thankfully nothing happened. He did not get discharged. He got discharged the next day. So because by the time when my relief got there, he was still there, and he was in Bay 1. like right next to the ambo doors. So this is probably about a month or 3 weeks before I ended up quitting the job. Well, I technically didn't quit. We all got let go. We all got fired because the company, the corporation that owned the hospital, along with many different other hospitals in different states, the corporation filed for bankruptcy. And I ended up only staying about 6 months at the job before we all had to go get different ones. And I ended up becoming a BHT for the first time. That'll be next week's video because that one was fun too, and I'm never doing that ever again. But anyways, so I remember, just to tell you one more story before I stop this, that this guy, the same person, was actually on the list without me knowing it. And this situation with St. Patrick's Day night with him, this was probably like 2.5 months later before we got the news from my supervisor that we were all going to get fired, basically. So for the ICU, which was connected to the security office where we used to hang out at when we weren't doing patrols or like standbys or codes. So there was a list of 3 guys that were coming to see one of their family members in the ICU. I walk out, and as I'm walking out the front doors to the ICU to just start my next exterior patrol, I stop and I see that guy. It's the same one. And he was walking in with some older man, maybe it was his father, and some guy that was probably around his age. As they're in the parking lot walking towards the doors that lead to the desk to go to ICU, I'm coming out this way. So we kind of meet like this for a second as we're going out that door. I see him. So he's just walking. I see him. He then sees me like side-eyed like this. And then he just puts his eyebrows up. He looks at me and smiles and goes like that, and then he just walks in to the desk, the ICU area. And when I saw him, like I think I almost broke a cold sweat. So I was like, this guy had to have been 5'4", 5'5", something like that. And I'm a big guy. I'm like between 6 and 6'1". Like it's when I saw that guy, I immediately went back to the security office and told my partner, like, hey, that guy's here. Like, so if he causes problems, like we're gonna have a fun one tonight. I might get severely injured tonight. Thankfully, he wasn't on anything, and he just went to he did his visitation. He left, no issues. So, anyways, so that was just a couple stories about that. You're going to be expected to do the paperwork for the valuables. You're going to be doing. I had to fill out all the incident reports, make sure my partner's stuff was filled out correctly. I basically did everything that I thought my boss would do. So at the time, but 6 months, but just like the last couple videos, there's so many more stories I could have like told on this subject at this place, because in this 6 month period, a lot of stuff happened, but that was the most insane thing I could think of. So yeah, you have to ask yourself, even though I'm getting more money and I get this great schedule, can I take on the responsibilities of the job? And thankfully I felt confident I was able to do it. So anyways, that's what happens when, I saw some video on TikTok about people talking about, well, I want to work at this kind of hospital, or I want to do this in unarmed security, but they're just making me stand there the whole time or whatever. Go get a job in a hospital in a ghetto area, because then you can just go hang out in the security office, and like they're not going to have expectations for you, kind of thing. I mean, you still got to get things done. Like you're still going to have to talk to PD. You have to do the morgue pickup. So I did that a lot, moving bodies with the guy with the white van. A lot of fire, ambo, PD, morgue, and specimen pickup. So you got to do all that if you're the lead. So anyways, this is SO Chris 199 with the new story, completely hardcore, unfiltered. I mean, if I get screwed over on YouTube for saying certain things, like, oh well, I'm tired of censoring myself. So anyways, this is unarmed security.